The others left, and only Yang Yi, the woman in white, and Snowy remained here. Snowy would naturally not leave. The woman in white stood up slowly. The hole in her stomach was still there. She grinned. I must go. Go. Yang Yi frowned. Why? Why don't you heal up first? She shook her head. If I stay here, I would be forcing her to attack. Yang Yi fell silent. Senior, what did you mean just now? She pondered deeply for a moment and replied. She dared to try and kill me, and that means she may not wish to merge anymore. She gazed at Yang Yi and continued. She doesn't want to become that form of me when I was at my peak. Or I should say she has surpassed my prime. Yang Yi fell silent. The woman in white spoke softly. Do you know about my background? Yang Yi shook his head. She chuckled. I was an ordinary person too. An extremely ordinary person. You may not believe me, but I only started cultivating at the age of 24. Because the heaven Tao of that time was heartless, and all things were like ants to it. It was a very dark time. She gazed at Yang Yi and continued. Do you know why I became so strong? Yang Yi shook his head. She smiled. Emotion. My Tao was actually just like yours. Yet now, she has probably surpassed the Tao of emotion. Yang Yi was at a loss for words. She gazed at Yang Yi. Before my main body split apart into 4, I really wanted to protect this world. At that time, I suppressed the 4-dimensional universe and brought stability to the 3-dimensional universe. Could be said that I brought balance to both universes. However, I was too strong. So strong that the universe couldn't endure my strength. So I split myself, and she is the strongest among the 4 of us. As she spoke, she looked up at the starry sky. I couldn't even resist a single attack from her. This proves that she isn't any weaker than when I was at my prime, and she can even travel freely between the 3-dimensional universe and 4-dimensional universe without affecting these universes. This represents that she didn't continue at this point. Yang Yi laughed bitterly. So we're dead. She shook her head and gazed at Yang Yi. Fight until the end and maybe there will be a way. She patted Yang Yi on the shoulder and spoke softly. Good luck. The woman in white left the primordial pagoda. At the ascension platform, Yang Yi fell silent. At this moment, he'd truly realized how serious the situation was. That woman definitely had big plans. Of course, most importantly, she wanted Snowy and Arya, the symbols of utmost goodness and evil. Yang Yi looked up at outer space. Snowy and Arya were like his life, and he didn't want anything to happen to them. So he had to risk everything to that end. Yang Yi fell silent for a short while, and then he returned to the cultivation room. He sat down cross-legged and placed the sword precursor on his lap. After that, he closed his eyes. Only that attack from before remained in his mind. Burial was a sword that could counter Destiny's swords. However, Burial was completely crushed against Justice earlier. A counter? Yang Yi shook his head slightly because it didn't exist. The facts proved that a sword was only strong because of its user. It wasn't that Burial was inferior to Justice, but the main problem was that he was weaker to Destiny's strongest form. Under such circumstances, no sword would change the outcome. Besides that, he noticed her sword Tao during this collision. It was a pure and true sword Tao. At that instant, he finally knew what the sword precursor and him lacked to attain the ordinary sword realm. It was the extreme that they lacked. Yang Yi seemed like a monk in meditation within the cultivation room. Just one man and his sword. Outside the pagoda, along with Ding Xiaoyao emerging from the pagoda, everyone outside surged into the hall. She glanced at them and spoke softly. He's fine. They immediately heaved sighs of relief. Ding Xiaoyao spoke softly. Don't lower your guard. We are facing the 4-dimensional universe, the mysterious expert from the end world, and destiny. To be frank, our future is still unknown. Huangying nodded slightly. We are naturally aware of that, Miss Ding. However, we have Brother Yang, so at least we feel a little more at ease with his presence. As for what happens next, we can only hope for the best. They nodded. At a time like this, they had no other choice but to risk their lives. Surrender? The enemy wouldn't even accept their surrender. The three-dimensional universe could only fight as one, and perhaps it may have a chance then. Ding Xiaoyao continued, "There is unrest in the city right now, so please deal with that." They nodded and were about to leave, but she suddenly said, "Wait!" They gazed at her, and Ding Xiaoyao fell silent for a short while before she said, "Open the city gates and evacuate everyone below the Destiny realm." The others immediately revealed solemn expressions on their faces. She said, "We must be prepared for the worst. Prepare for the worst." A short while later they left. Only Nanjing and Ding Xiaoyao remained in the hall. Ding Xiaoyao sat at the side with a calm expression on her face. A short while later, she suddenly gazed at Nanjing. "Miss An, I'm sure you know what staying represents." And Nanjing didn't speak. Ding Xiaoyao rested against the chair and spoke softly. "You know, I think our chances of winning is 0 this time." And Nanjing gazed at Ding Xiaoyao, and the latter chuckled. "I don't know what Destiny is planning, but I know that we're pigs that have been raised in a pen. It isn't that she doesn't have the strength to kill us. She just wants us to grow fatter before she does. We cannot resist her absolute strength." She looked into the hall and continued, "He's monstrously strong, but he isn't facing a human this time. He's facing a real god. A god who has practically instilled despair in 2 universes." And Nanjing looked up into the sky outside the hall. "May it be life or death. I will stay with him until the end." Ding Xiaoyao glanced at her and smiled. "True. I let him down a lot in the past, so being able to die with him can be considered as a form of release for me." And Nanjing shook her head. "He never blamed you." She vanished on the spot. Ding Xiaoyao fell silent for a long time, and then she chuckled. In the sky above Universe City, 2 women looked down at the city below. They were Qi Bidian and Tianxiu, of course. A short while passed before Qi Bidian said, "That kid is much stronger than before." Tianxiu nodded slightly, and she had a grin on the corners of her mouth. "He has grown quite a bit." She seemed to have thought of something at this point, and she suddenly looked up at the sky. "Do you have any confidence in being able to kill her?" Qi Bidian shook her head. Tianxiu fell silent. Meanwhile, Qi Bidian added, "However, we can hunt that mysterious expert who tried to stop us earlier. That fellow is trying to scheme against him too." Tianxiu nodded slightly. She looked down at Universe Hall, and then she vanished into the starry sky with Qi Bidian. A sword cultivator was walking slowly through the boundless starry sky. He was walking very slowly. It seemed like he was taking a stroll. He just walked forward until he entered a barrier of light, and then a new world appeared before him. It seemed like it had been scorched, and it was filled with a rotten and scorched smell. The entire world looked terrible. The sword cultivator frowned slightly at the sight of this. Suddenly, a middle-aged man appeared before the sword cultivator. The man wore an ink-black robe and had a single eye. The sword cultivator looked behind the middle-aged man, and then he moved his gaze away. "There isn't anyone stronger than you." The man nodded slightly. "I'm Monarch Yen. May I know your name?" The sword cultivator spoke softly. "Profounder Continent, the Unfettered One." Monarch Yen said, "Are you here in my 4-dimensional universe just to fight me?" The sword cultivator nodded. "That's all I want. Just to decide on a victor, and we can avoid deciding on life and death." Monarch Yen fell silent for a long time. In the end, he shook his head. "I'm no match for you." The sword cultivator shook his head. "I think you can," Monarch Yen replied. "Perhaps I can if I risk my life. But forgive me, I have countless clansmen depending on me. I cannot risk my life against you." The sword cultivator fell silent. Monarch Yen bowed slightly. "Please show me mercy." The sword cultivator suddenly asked, "You plan to invade the 3-dimensional universe?" Monarch Yen nodded. "It will only end in death." The sword cultivator's thumb moved slightly, and a sword howl resounded. Monarch Yen clenched his fists and was ready to attack at any moment. Meanwhile, a few dozen powerful auras appeared behind him and around the sword cultivator. This force was many times greater than the force that attacked Universe City. They were all here for one person. Moreover, A huge altar had started to come alive behind Monarch Yen. Suddenly, the sword cultivator looked to the side. His gaze seemed like it could travel through space. A short while later, his sword descended back into its sheath. Monarch Yan's fists were still clenched, and he seemed like he was facing a formidable enemy. The sword cultivator walked off into the distance. Monarch Yen asked, "Why?" The sword cultivator replied softly, "He may be my future opponent, but he's a junior of my sect. Now that he's in trouble, I plan to lend him a hand and kill you. But it seems that isn't necessary anymore." Monarch Yen asked again, "Why?" The sword cultivator didn't say a word. He just vanished into the distance while Monarch Yen and the others watched. A short while later, his eyes narrowed slightly. "Why does the three-dimensional universe have such an expert? Is destiny not enough?" At the moment the sword cultivator left, a man walked out of the hall in Universe City. The man looked up at the sky and cracked a smile. "Everything is still quite nice." Of course, the man was Yang Yi. However, he was completely different from before. His aura was completely different. Meanwhile, Nanjing walked over to his side. "Congratulations!" She was naturally able to sense the changes in him. At this moment, there was a true gap between them. Yang Yi glanced at Nanjing and smiled, and then he looked up at the sky. "I wonder how many will survive all of this." It was unlike any other battle of the past. In the past, it was just a battle of a certain area, yet now the entire three-dimensional universe was at risk of destruction. The enemy was too strong. The enemy was truly too strong. Meanwhile, Jian Wudi and the others arrived before the hall, and they couldn't help but smile when they saw Yang Yi. Even though the path ahead was bleak, they still had hope. Yang Yi spoke softly, "Everyone, I'm afraid few of us will survive in the end." Huang Ying smiled. "It can't be helped, right?" Yang Yi nodded. "Then let's give it our all. If we win, that would be perfect, and we can continue enjoying our lives. If we lose, then let's fight this final battle to our heart's content." "Ha ha!" The others roared with laughter. Their laughter was full of heroic spirit. Of course, perhaps there was some helplessness in it all. After all, the three-dimensional universe had no choice but to fight for its life or fight to its death. They had no other choice. Yang Yi and Nanjing left Universe City and arrived in outer space. Yang Yi got another chair and placed it there. He just sat there while Nanjing sat by his side. Yang Yi suddenly smiled. "I never expected that I would one day protect a world." And Nanjing lowered her head slightly. Actually, while Yang Yi was selfish, it depended on the person. He'd never been selfish to those who considered his own, but he'd just never trusted outsiders in the past. Suddenly, the space before them trembled, and then an old man walked quickly out of there. The old man with a bamboo chest. Yang Yi was stunned when he saw the old man. A moment later, he frowned because the old man had many injuries. The old man walked quickly to Yang Yi. He glanced at Yang Yi and there was quite a bit of surprise in his eyes. "Young brother." Yang Yi smiled and remained silent. The old man shook his head and smiled. "Congratulations." Yang Yi smiled. "Senior, what happened to you?" The old man sighed softly. "I'm here to seek your help." Yang Yi replied. "Senior, please be frank." The old man glanced at Yang Yi and said, "There are 4 paths from the 4-dimensional universe that lead to the 3-dimensional universe. They are in the 4 directions. They are teleportation passageways that the 4-dimensional universe converged all its strength to create. All those years ago, Destiny split herself into 4 in order to suppress these passageways. Of course, the 4-dimensional universe is guarding the other 3 passageways. Because the 3 of them are very strong, and the 4-dimensional universe is worried that they would launch a counterattack. That is also why Monarch Yen doesn't dare to come here with his main body. He has to protect the 4-dimensional universe. So, do you understand what I'm trying to say?" Yang Yi fell silent for a moment and replied, "I understand." They had merely been fighting the tip of the iceberg. Moreover, the 4-dimensional universe wasn't really afraid of Universe City. It was afraid of the woman in white and the others. The old man with the bamboo chest said, "I'm here to ask you to help her." Yang Yi asked, "The woman in white?" The old man nodded. I was guarding the southern passageway with her when she noticed the situation here was very serious, and so she asked me to guard the passageway while she came here to help you. But when she returned, she was seriously injured. Her injuries are very serious because she has always been fighting with injuries as well. The four-dimensional universe clearly noticed the state she was in, and more experts of greater strength have been swarming from over there. Even the projection of Monarch Yan's main body is over there. She's in a very bad situation. Xianxia nodded. Let's go. But he seemed to have thought of something at this point and said, Senior, you stay here and protect this place for me. All right? The old man hesitated for a moment and said, Just the two of you? Xianxia nodded. He wanted to say something, but Xianxia spoke first. Senior, trust me. The old man glanced at Xianxia. In the end, he nodded. All right, I can take this opportunity to perfect this formation of yours. Xianxia smiled. That's great. The old man formed a seal with both hands, and then a teleportation formation appeared below Xianxia and Nanjing. An instant later, they vanished on the spot. The old man fell silent for a moment, and then he shot toward the city below. Around 15 minutes later, Xianxia and Nanjing walked out of a teleportation passageway. As soon as they did, a horrible smell of blood assaulted them. They looked up into the distance, and there was a huge black vortex at the end of their vision. A woman in white was standing there with a sword in hand, and strange living beings were frequently charging out of the vortex. Even though none of them could endure a single swing of her sword, they were still ceaselessly charging at her. Xianxia spoke solemnly. They are exhausting her. And Nanjing nodded. Xianxia glanced at the woman in white and smiled. Unfortunately, I can't play the hero that saves the beauty. And Nanjing glanced at him. You want to be a hero? Xianxia hurriedly shook his head. I'm joking, just joking. He quickly charged over once he finished speaking. Meanwhile, and Nanjing glanced at Xianxia while a slight grin arose on the corners of her mouth. She quickly followed him. A sword howl suddenly resounded in the distance. The woman in white stopped, and Xianxia appeared before her. She frowned slightly. You? Xianxia smiled. Let's kill our way in? She gazed at Xianxia for a few breaths of time and smiled. All right. Xianxia suddenly emanated a ray of blood-red light. The demonic sword Dao. Xianxia turned around, and a ray of light flashed. Hiss! Blood sprayed wherever Xianxia passed. She grinned behind him. You've grown quite quickly. She vanished on the spot as well. Just like that, Xianxia and Nanjing and the woman in white killed all the way forward. A short while later, they were in front of the black vortex. Suddenly, a ray of black light erupted from within it, and it instantly enveloped all three of them. Hiss! 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 Countless rays of sword energy crisscrossed within the black light, and in just a short while, the black light had been sliced into bits. Meanwhile, a pitch-black sword slammed against the huge vortex. Boom! The huge vortex shook, but it didn't shatter. Burial flew back into the sword gourd on Xianxia's waist. Xianxia frowned as he gazed at the huge vortex. The woman in white smiled. It's no ordinary vortex. It's made from the universe walls of the four-dimensional universe. Only a handful in this world can destroy it. Xianxia gazed at her. Even you can't? The woman in white smiled. I can. However, what's the point? The passageway is built, so destroying this wall is equivalent to fully opening a passageway between the universes. It doesn't make a difference. No, if we launch a counterattack, then destroying it does make a difference. Xianxia was stunned for a moment and said, Hurry up and destroy it. We're definitely launching a counterattack. She gazed at him. Are you serious? Xianxia nodded. She didn't say another word and just swung her sword. A sword howl resounded, and then the vortex shook violently. Meanwhile, a shadow flashed out from it. Xianxia's eyes narrowed slightly. He was about to attack, but the woman in white was faster than him. She raised her hand and slashed. Bang! An explosion resounded, and then a white and black shadow flickered incessantly in the distance. They were so fast that even Xianxia couldn't see their movements clearly, and Nanjing was about to attack, but Xianxia shook his head. She gazed at him and he pointed at the distant vortex. She nodded slightly and understood what he meant. Meanwhile, Xianxia suddenly vanished on the spot. An array of light slammed against the vortex. Burial! Bang! The vortex shook violently and cracked open. Meanwhile, Xianxia switched burial for the sword precursor and slashed once more. Hiss! This slash instantly sliced the vortex into half. A wisp of madness flashed through Xianxia's eyes as he gazed at a Nanjing. Come on! Let's kill our way in there. As soon as he said that, he charged through with a Nanjing. Suddenly, a colossus slammed itself at him. A panthera. Xianxia dashed forward. It only took a moment for them to grow closer and closer. Suddenly, Xianxia drew his sword. An arc of sword energy flashed. Hiss! The arc of sword energy appeared behind the panthera. The panthera was still charging forward, but its body split apart at the center. In an instant, blood and internal organs sprayed in a bloody mess. Suddenly, the shadow, who was in battle with the woman in white, suddenly shot backward. At the same time, he shot a glance at Xianxia. The ordinary sword. There was a trace of disbelief in his voice. The ordinary sword. The shadow hadn't chosen to stop Xianxia mainly because he felt Xianxia's strength wasn't sufficient to break through the vortex. But he hadn't expected Xianxia to have attained the ordinary sword. The shadow was about to stop Xianxia, but a wave of sword energy sealed off his path of retreat. At the same time, a woman stood before him. The woman in white. She grinned, and then rays of light appeared around the shadow. They were like a cage that completely surrounded him. Meanwhile, a pike appeared in the shadow's grasp. The shadow took the pike in both hands and stabbed it down before him. Bang! In an instant, a wave of powerful energy rippled through the area, but the sword energy didn't shatter and kept the shadow there. Suddenly, the shadow turned a little more solid. After that, he swept the pike forward. Bang! The sword energy there was pushed back, and it flickered back into the sword in the woman's hand. The shadow looked to the side. At this moment, Xianxia and a Nanjing had vanished from his field of vision, and there were numerous huge corpses in the surroundings. The shadow hurled the pike forward. Meanwhile, Xianxia suddenly stopped, and when he turned around, a pike was just around 1 m away from him. Xianxia took a step forward and stabbed. It was a fluid string of movements. Clang! An ear-piercing sound of metal colliding resounded. The pike shook violently and was blasted away. Xianxia didn't even look back in that direction before vanishing into the distance. Of course, and Nanjing was following close behind him. In the starry sky, the shadow gazed at the woman in white. According to my knowledge, she has spared you twice. Trust me, there won't be a third. The woman in white smiled. I know, the shadow said. You're courting death. She nodded. I'm sure you're aware that she won't spare you either. So why do you obey her commands? Can't our universes coexist? The shadow chuckled. Have you taken a look at my 4-dimensional universe? It's in ruins and She shook her head. You brought this upon yourselves. After your Yanma clan became the strongest clan in the 4-dimensional universe, how did you treat the others? You slaughtered until the world lost balance, and spirit energy was even exhausted by your clan without any restraints. So, who can you blame for the situation your universe is in? The shadow shook his head. Our universes can coexist. Just kill that woman, and we can live in peace. She glanced at the shadow. So send us to risk our lives against her, and then your universe will reap the rewards. That's a great idea. The shadow didn't say anything. He just suddenly appeared before her. Meanwhile, she swung her sword, and an expanse of sword energy enveloped the shadow. Meanwhile, Xianxia and a Nanjing had killed their way into the 4-dimensional universe. All along the way, experts had ceaselessly arrived before them, but even peak Destiny Realm experts found it difficult to resist even a swing of Xianxia's sword. One attack. At this moment, Xianxia wasn't the same Xianxia he used to be. The ordinary sword. A short while later, they arrived before a floating city. It was a huge city, and there was a robust man with an axe standing on its walls. At the same time, a few dozen peak Destiny Realm experts appeared around them. Moreover, even more auras were rushing over here. They were surrounded. Yang Yi slowly sheathed his sword and looked up at the robust man on the city walls. Meanwhile, the man suddenly leaped down, and he slammed his axe at Yang Yi with both hands. The man used the force of the jump to give his strength a huge boost, and the force of this attack had surpassed the strength of a peak Destiny Realm expert. Yang Yi gazed at the descending axe with indifference while a Nanjing had moved back a little. A short while later, the axe grew closer and closer to Yang Yi. Yang Yi suddenly looked down when it was around 30 m away from his head, and then a ray of sword energy shot up into the air. A resounding and furious shout surged through space. Break! A ray of sword energy slammed against the huge axe. A moment later, the axe shook violently and exploded into bits. At the same time, the robust man was blasted away, but just a moment later, a figure soundlessly appeared behind the man. It was Yang Yi. Yang Yi turned around and slashed. The robust man's expression changed drastically, and he pressed his arms down toward Yang Ye's sword. Boom! His arms clamped down on Yang Ye's sword, but it only lasted for an instant. Yang Yi twisted his right hand, and so did his sword. Hiss! The robust man's arms were instantly chopped off, and then a ray of sword energy flashed through his throat. Yang Yi sheathed his sword slowly behind the man, and then he gazed at the floating city. A moment later, he flicked his thumb, and his sword shot out of its sheath. Hiss! The sword slashed the floating city. Meanwhile, the experts of the four-dimensional universe didn't try to stop him. Right when the sword was around 30 m away from the city, a man appeared before the sword. The man slammed a punch at the sword. Bang! Yang Ye's sword was forced to a stop. Meanwhile, the man slammed his right hand forward. Bang! Yang Ye's sword shook violently, and then it shot swiftly in Yang Ye's direction. Yang Yi remained indifferent. The sword precursor stopped a few inches away from his forehead. It had stopped on its own. A moment later, it automatically entered the sheath. Yang Yi gazed at the man, and the latter spoke softly. I know why that sword cultivator stopped. It's because you're at the ordinary sword realm. The ordinary sword, the peak of sword cultivators. How surprising! Yang Yi walked slowly in the man's direction. Suddenly, a shadow appeared behind the man. Yang Yi frowned slightly. At the same time, the woman in white appeared by Yang Ye's side. She spoke softly. Leave for now. Yang Ye's frown deepened, but he chose to trust her. Yang Yi gazed at a Nanjing, and the latter nodded slightly. The three of them were about to leave when the man suddenly stretched out his right hand. This isn't a place you can just come and go as you place. As soon as he said that, he waved his right hand. In an instant, the space around them cracked open, and then a huge pitch-black vortex enveloped them. In the vortex, a strand of mysterious energy was ceaselessly corroding them, and Yang Ye's sword intent instantly dispersed upon leaving his body. Yang Yi asked, What is this? The woman in white didn't speak and just raised her palm. Past life appeared in her grasp. A moment later, past life started spinning rapidly, and then a myriad of rays of sword energy rippled out incessantly. Hiss! 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 The entire vortex was filled with sword energy. Suddenly, a pike tore through the sword energy and arrived before her. She tapped her finger forward, and an ethereal sword slammed against the pike. The sword instantly cracked apart. Meanwhile, the woman in white glanced at Yang Yi. What are you still standing there for? Yang Yi returned to his senses. He didn't use his sword but activated the sword domain instead. In an instant, the sword domain enveloped the entire vortex. Yang Yi spoke softly, Break! As soon as he said that, countless rays of sword energy appeared within the sword domain, and then the vortex exploded apart. Suddenly, Monarch Yen appeared before Yang Yi. Monarch Yen slapped his palm down. Bang! In an instant, Yang Yi was pushed back repeatedly while a wisp of blood seeped out from the corner of his mouth. The sword domain had been destroyed. Monarch Yen appeared before Yang Yi again. At the same time, Yang Ye's sword suddenly left its sheath. Monarch Yen slammed a punch forward. Sword and fist slammed against each other. Boom! Yang Yi was pushed back repeatedly again. However, when Monarch Yen attacked again, Yang Yi suddenly pressed forward and slashed. Explosive heaven rend. At the instant he drew his sword, the space in a huge area collapsed. Monarch Yen retreated while slowly clenching his left hand. In an instant, an ethereal shield appeared above him. Yang Ye's sword struck right against it. Bang! This rumbling explosion was like a thunderclap. Yang Ye's sword had struck the shield, but it couldn't break the shield. The shield had forcibly stopped his attack. Suddenly, a white shadow flashed, and then Monarch Yen suddenly vanished on the spot. He was 3 kilometers away when he appeared again. The woman in white was in front of Yang Yi. Yang Yi gazed at Monarch Yen, and his hand was trembling. He hadn't expected that even after attaining the ordinary sword realm, he would still be incapable of doing anything to Monarch Yen. However, it did make sense. After all, he was the master of the 4-dimensional universe, so he would be dead by now if he wasn't strong. The woman in white said, "You leave first." Yang Yi shook his head. "We'll leave together." She glanced at Yang Yi and the latter said, "If we can't leave, we'll just have a nice fight with them. What do you think?" She grinned. "All right." Monarch Yen suddenly raised his right hand, and then he waved it at them from afar. Under the ground below. Boom! Colossus shot up into the sky. Bang! Yang Yi and the others were pushed back through the air. They stopped themselves after being pushed quite a distance, and they saw a Colossus appear in the air above the floating city. It was like a dragon, but it wasn't a dragon. The Colossus had the head of a dragon, the body of a wolf, and thousands of spikes on its back. Every spike was extremely long too. A devil caracal. The woman in white spoke softly. "It's the strongest demon beast in the 4-dimensional universe. It's on par with Area. This place is really lively." Suddenly, a voice came from the side. Yang Yi looked toward its source and saw a group of people. He knew them. It was the mysterious expert and the others from the End World. Along with the mysterious expert's arrival, the situation here grew even more disadvantageous to Yang Ye's group. Yang Yi gazed at the woman in white. "I'm sorry." He chose to attack. Yet now, not only was he in a hopeless situation, he dragged her into it. He couldn't help but feel quite apologetic about it. She smiled. It was coming sooner or later. Once she finished speaking, past life suddenly started shaking violently, and then it shot up into the air. In an instant, countless rays of sword energy rained down like a storm. Yang Yi gazed at a Nanjing, and she shook her head. Yang Yi smiled bitterly. "Just this once." She fell silent for an instant, and then she entered the primordial pagoda. A Nanjing was strong, but only people who were exceptionally strong could fight this battle. He was very sure that if a Nanjing fought in this battle, she would definitely die under the joint forces of dozens of peak Destiny Realm experts. Not to mention the mysterious expert and Monarch Yen were here. Once she entered the primordial pagoda, Yang Yi closed his eyes slowly. In an instant, he emanated boundless slaughter intent and sword intent. The demonic sword Tao. At this moment, he didn't dare to hold back at all. Suddenly, Monarch Yan's pike left his grasp. In an instant, the woman in white's sword energy was obliterated inch by inch. At practically the exact same moment, the mysterious expert appeared before Yang Yi. Yang Ye's sword left its sheath. The mysterious expert didn't try to dodge it and allowed Yang Ye's sword to descend. However, it only hit an afterimage. Meanwhile, a black palm suddenly slammed down on Yang Ye's chest. Yang Ye's figure curled forward, but his sword swept forward horizontally at the instant his figure was blasted away. Hiss! It sounded like something had been sliced open, and an afterimage flickered backward repeatedly. But at this moment, Yang Yi was far away. As soon as he stopped himself, the mysterious expert stretched out his right hand and pressed it down. Bang! The space above Yang Yi collapsed and crashed down upon him. In an instant, Yang Ye's figure warped. Meanwhile, burial flashed out of the sword gourd. Hiss! The space around Yang Yi was sliced open. The mysterious expert suddenly vanished, and he was in front of Yang Yi when he appeared again. Yang Yi took a small step back, and a pitch-black palm arrived just around an inch before his stomach. If he'd been just a little slower, the palm would have struck him. At the instant he took that step back, Yang Ye's sword had descended simultaneously. However, a hand clamped down on the sword. A moment later the hand shook slightly. Bang! Yang Yi was pushed backward repeatedly. The mysterious expert took a step forward and instantly arrived before Yang Yi. However, he was greeted by a sword to his head. However, this attack missed, because the mysterious expert had retreated 300 m back at the instant the sword descended. His speed far surpassed Yang Yi. Yang Yi wiped off the blood on the corner of his mouth, and then he looked up at the mysterious expert in the distance. Meanwhile, the latter suddenly turned ethereal. Yang Ye's pupils constricted, and then burial suddenly appeared in his left grasp. After that, he swung both swords simultaneously, but they still hit nothing but air. At the instant they missed, the mysterious expert's palm suddenly struck Yang Ye's chest. A ferocious expression arose on the corners of Yang Ye's mouth. At this moment, he activated the sword domain, and in this instant, he sensed the location of the mysterious expert's main body. And it was in this instant that burial slashed forward. Bang! In the sword domain, a muffled explosion resounded, and then an afterimage flashed backward. But just a moment later, the afterimage suddenly vanished on the spot. Yang Yi stabbed his sword toward the right. An afterimage just happened to arrive there, as if it was slamming itself against his sword. Bam! The afterimage was pushed back again, but it vanished right after. At the same time, Yang Yi swung his sword again. Bam! The afterimage was pushed back again. Yang Yi looked up at the afterimage, and his sword was trembling. He'd been at a disadvantage because he couldn't grasp the movements of the mysterious expert, but after a few collisions, he'd gained a rough grasp of the mysterious expert's strange movement technique. The mysterious expert spoke softly. As expected of the ordinary sword, you're much stronger than before. As soon as he finished speaking, the space around Yang Yi suddenly started to crack open. At this moment, Yang Yi was like a cracked mirror, and he'd cracked into countless pieces. Space had cracked, and he was still there. At this moment, Yang Ye's expression changed. It was because he'd noticed that his body was cracking into countless smaller pieces. Yang Yi closed his eyes slowly. A moment later, the cracked space around him suddenly calmed down. Or to be more precise, he'd calmed down, but the space around him had cracked into countless fine pieces. However, he was fine. The sword domain, it formed a world of its own. He'd used the sword domain to escape the space under the mysterious expert's control. So, even if that expanse of space cracked open, he was completely unharmed. Besides that, he discovered something new. Yang Yi looked up at the mysterious expert. So that's the secret behind your movement technique. He'd been suppressed by the mysterious expert's speed mainly because they weren't in the same expanse of space. The mysterious expert had been switching expanses of space to get so fast. Now he'd discovered it, and he could do the same with his sword domain. The mysterious expert slowly crossed his arms before his chest. The ordinary sword, to be honest, I knew you were an extraordinarily monstrous genius, but I never expected you to attain the ordinary sword in such a short amount of time. But it still doesn't make a difference. As soon as he finished speaking, he was about to attack, but Yang Yi suddenly vanished on the spot. The mysterious expert frowned and waved his right hand. The space there instantly started rippling, and then a sword pierced through space and arrived before his forehead. Hiss! This attack still missed. However, the space around the mysterious expert warped strangely, and then Yang Ye's sword stabbed into space. Bang! A moment of silence ensued, and then the space there exploded apart before two figures appeared here. It was Yang Yi and the mysterious expert. Yang Yi had accurately located the mysterious expert earlier. Now he wasn't in such a passive position anymore. He didn't have to defend himself in order to attack anymore. He could go on the offensive now. Bang! Suddenly, an explosion resounded from nearby, and then countless rays of sword energy and black energy rippled out incessantly. Yang Yi looked over, and he saw the woman in white and Monarch Yen in intense battle. While the woman in white hadn't gained the upper hand, she wasn't at a disadvantage either. However, as far as Yang Yi was concerned, it felt like both Monarch Yen and the mysterious expert still hadn't revealed their true strength. Their true objective, the one they truly feared and wanted to eliminate, was actually the woman above the clouds. Suddenly, Monarch Yen retreated and created distance between himself and the woman in white. Monarch Yen gazed at the mysterious expert. "Kill him!" The mysterious expert nodded. Once they gave the order, all the Destiny Realm experts here attacked. Their charge was led by Monarch Yen and the mysterious expert. At this moment, their auras actually started rising rapidly, and it was more than just a few times stronger than before. At this moment, even the woman in white's face had turned solemn. She suddenly appeared by Yang Ye's side and grabbed his shoulder. At the same time, a white teleportation formation appeared below Yang Yi. However, Yang Yi tapped his right foot down. Bang! The teleportation formation shattered. She glanced at Yang Yi, and for the very first time, there was anger in them. Yang Yi cracked a smile. "I don't want anyone to sacrifice themselves for me again." How could he not know what she was planning? She planned to teleport himself away while staying behind. She had no chance to win against their joint forces. Of course, they had no chance even if he stayed. But he still chose to stay. She shook her head slightly. "Even if we escape today, I won't survive. You don't have to die here." Yang Yi frowned slightly. He was about to speak when she suddenly turned around and swung her sword. Bang! As soon as her sword descended, both Yang Yi and her were blasted away. Zuamu and the other Destiny Realm experts were behind them. Yang Yi forcibly twisted his body and transformed into a ray of sword energy that charged at Zuamu and the others. Meanwhile, the woman in white faced the mysterious expert and Monarch Yen. Bang! As soon as they collided, she was instantly blasted away. Her sword energy hadn't even been fully released when it was suppressed and blasted into bits. Meanwhile, Yang Yi was suppressed as well. He was facing dozens of Destiny Realm experts, and all of them were at the peak of the Destiny Realm. However, while he was being suppressed, he didn't fall to them. Conversely, he was growing increasingly ferocious. Hiss! A sword soundlessly flashed through the throat of a Destiny Realm expert. A moment later, Yang Yi appeared behind that expert. Meanwhile, a few dozen powerful waves of energy descended upon the area he was at. Bang! Yang Yi hurriedly released his sword intent, but it exploded apart in an instant. Bang! Yang Yi was pushed over 30 kilometers back. As soon as he stopped himself, a few dozen experts appeared around him. Suddenly, the woman in white appeared in front of Yang Yi, and there was a pike in her stomach. Yang Yi was stunned by the sight of this. She glanced at Yang Yi and said, "There's too many of them. Go to my other two forms." Boom! As soon as she finished speaking, a strand of blood-red flames suddenly appeared around her. She'd ignited her soul. At the same time, her blood, spirit energy, and soul energy were surging into past life. She was sacrificing herself to her sword. Obviously, she planned to sacrifice herself. Suddenly, a strand of mysterious energy enveloped her. The sword domain. As soon as it enveloped her, the flames around her were instantly suppressed by force. Yang Yi pulled her to his side and glanced at her. "I told you, I don't want anyone to sacrifice themselves for me." She looked him in the eyes. "Then shall we die together?" Yang Yi cracked a smile. "I don't want to die. However, if I have to, it can't be helped." Even though he was smiling, there were tears flowing out the corners of his eyes. Too many had vanished all along the way. Blood Maiden, Yang Wudi, Elder Mu, Arya, who had returned to her original form for him. There were many people in his memories. Dead. No one wanted to die, but he didn't want others to give up their lives so that he could live. Yang Yi gazed at Monarch Yen and the others that had already surrounded them. "While leaving would allow me to survive, my heart would never find peace. My sword does not seek invincibility. It seeks a clear conscience." Suddenly, the sword precursor shook violently. and then a sword howl tore through the sky and shot up above the clouds. The sword intent and slaughter intent around Yang Yi grew rapidly, and his aura was growing rapidly as well. Monarch Yen fell silent for a moment, and then he spoke softly. The three-dimensional universe is full of outstanding experts. The mysterious expert nodded slightly. Moments of life and death are the greatest test of the heart, and the greatest test of the sword heart. Before a go-board high above in the clouds, the woman suddenly shot a glance down toward her right. A moment of silence ensued before she grinned. A clear conscience. His heart toward the sword Tao has found truth, the extreme and purity. Everything is born from the heart, and the heart has overcome destiny. Another has struggled free of those shackles. The four-dimensional universe. Yang Ye's sword intent and slaughter intent were already at an extremely terrifying level, and the destiny realm experts in the surroundings had fear in their eyes. Previously, Yang Yi had already attained the ordinary sword. Now, he'd clearly attained another advancement. It could be said that besides the woman in white, Monarch Yen, and the mysterious expert, no one else here could resist a swing of his sword now. Yang Yi looked up at space, fell silent for a moment, and then gazed at Monarch Yen and the mysterious expert. Shall we fight one-on-one? Fight. At this moment, Yang Yi had forgotten about life and death. All he wanted was to fight. Monarch Yen shook his head. It's not that I fear you, but it's meaningless to fight you in single combat right now. He gazed at the mysterious expert. What do you think? The mysterious expert nodded. We must kill him, of course. He vanished on the spot once he finished speaking. Yang Yi suddenly swung his sword with both hands. This attack carried his sword domain and dual intents. Bang! In an instant, the space in a huge area around Yang Yi was obliterated. At the same time, countless rays of sword energy appeared within the sword domain. A grinder of sword energy. However, once the mysterious expert and shadow attacked in unison, the sword energy was instantly obliterated. But at this moment, Yang Yi had taken the woman in white and retreated far away. Monarch Yen laughed coldly. You must be dreaming if you think that you can escape. As soon as he finished speaking, he raised his right hand and pulled lightly. A pike suddenly appeared before Yang Yi and the woman in white. Yang Yi raised his sword and slashed. Bam! The pike was instantly blasted away. However, Monarch Yen and the mysterious expert had appeared before him. Monarch Yen shook his head. You think you can escape? You're too naive. As soon as he finished speaking, he raised his hands. In an instant, a pike transformed into a beam of black light that shot at Yang Yi and the woman in white. The woman in white was about to counterattack when Yang Yi forcibly sent her into the primordial pagoda. She'd gone head-on against Monarch Yen and the mysterious expert just now, and she'd forcibly ignited her soul earlier. While Yang Yi had managed to stop her, it had still done harm to her body and vitality. If she were to forcibly continue fighting, she would really be giving her life away. Once he sent her into the primordial pagoda, Yang Yi swiftly drew his sword and slashed. Bang! The pike was instantly blasted away. But at the same instant that he swung his sword, a pitch-black palm slammed against his chest. A mouthful of blood sprayed from Yang Yi as his figure was blasted away. Yang Ye's figure hadn't even stopped when a pike tore through space once more. At the same time, a few dozen auras slammed down upon him like mountains from all around. Besides that, his sword domain shattered as soon as it formed. At this moment, Yang Yi knew that he may be finished. Nothing was working. He was being suppressed by absolute strength. However, Yang Yi still refused to just wait for death to arrive. Right when he was about to ignite his soul, Monarch Yen and the mysterious expert suddenly stopped. They turned around simultaneously, and then two shadows slammed against them. Bang! Bang! Two explosions resounded, and then they were pushed back repeatedly. Two familiar faces appeared before Yang Yi. It was Qi Bitian and Xianxia. Yang Yi cracked a smile. Long time no see. As soon as he finished speaking, blood surged out incessantly like a fountain from his mouth. Only God knows how many Destiny Realm experts he'd fought on his own just now. Xianxia glanced at Yang Yi, and then she walked over to him and patted him lightly on the shoulder. Nice work! In the past, he'd been relying on too many things. At that time, she'd been quite disappointed in him. But now, she was very satisfied with Xianxia's growth. He was truly capable of holding his own. For some reason, Xianxia was very happy and pleased to be praised by her. Cultivation sized up Xianxia and smiled. Kid, you really grow quick. Now, even I wouldn't dare to say that I can defeat you in a one-on-one battle. Xianxia smiled embarrassedly. Senior, what are you doing here? Cultivation replied. Kid, you got lucky. We were here to explore the four-dimensional universe when we sensed a fight here. So we came over to have a look. But we never expected to find you here. You're really brave to actually come all the way here. Huh. Xianxia laughed bitterly. He'd gone a little too far this time. He felt like he could come and go as he pleased. But the facts proved that the mysterious expert and the four-dimensional universe weren't as weak as he thought. The ordinary sword did not represent invincibility. However, he'd gained a lot from this incident. The changes in his sword heart could be described as an unparalleled change in him. Now, he could fight the mysterious expert or Monarch Yen on his own. Now, he was truly among the ranks of the true experts. Meanwhile, Xianxia gazed at Monarch Yen and the mysterious expert. I'm taking him with me. Monarch Yen shook his head. Over our dead bodies? Xianxia wasn't the same Xianxia anymore. Allowing him to leave now was like allowing a tiger to return to its mountain. Xianxia nodded slightly and gazed at Xianxia. Can you still fight? Xianxia nodded. I can still kill at least 10. Xianxia spoke softly. Leave these two to us. As soon as she finished speaking, Cultivation and her vanished on the spot. Meanwhile, a flame suddenly appeared in the mysterious expert's grasp. Omni-Phantom. As soon as the powerful flame appeared, this entire part of the world turned slightly ethereal. The mysterious expert suddenly vanished on the spot, and then a wave of flames surged at Xianxia. Xianxia's eyes narrowed slightly as she slowly clenched her fists. A moment later, a wave of dark light swept out from her. Bang! As soon as they collided, the entire area shook and transformed into an ocean of flames. But just a moment later, the flames vanished. A little fellow had appeared on Xianxia's shoulder. Snowy. Snowy inhaled greedily and gazed at the mysterious expert who was rapidly retreating. Or to be more precise, she was looking at the flame in his grasp. Snowy blinked as she gazed at it, and then cracked a smile. Even Xianxia didn't know what that smile meant. The Omni-Phantom in the mysterious expert's grasp shook violently, and then it was about to charge at Snowy. Obviously, it was infuriated by her. Snowy shuddered when she saw that it wanted to charge at her. It wasn't fear but excitement. The Omni-Phantom didn't charge at her in the end because the mysterious expert stopped it. The mysterious expert shook his head at the flame. She's your bane. He put it away while he spoke. Disappointment flashed through Snowy's eyes when she witnessed this. Xianxia hurriedly sent the little fellow back into the primordial pagoda because he noticed that the little fellow seemed like she wanted to charge over there. Meanwhile, Xianxia glanced at Xianxia. Retreat from here. Xianxia nodded and retreated. Even if they were going to fight, they couldn't do it in the enemy's base. At the very least, their joint forces had no chance, not even if they included the woman in white. Zhuamu and the others charged at Xianxia when they noticed his intent to retreat. They were led by the devil Caracal. Presently, only it could resist Xianxia's attacks. Other Destiny Realm experts would practically die as soon as they got close to him. A vicious glow flashed through Xianxia's eyes as he gazed at the devil Caracal that was charging at him. He tightened his grip on the hilt of his sword, and then sped up. At this moment, his body had started to turn ethereal. The sword domain, Xianxia grew even faster. At this moment, a vicious glow flashed through the devil Caracal's eyes, and it rose its speed to its limits. Man and demon grew closer and closer. A breath of time later, Xianxia suddenly drew his sword. Bang! An explosion resounded, and the devil Caracal was blasted away. However, Xianxia was pushed back repeatedly. all the way back to where he'd been standing a moment ago. Zhuamu and the others were about to attack, but a furious howl suddenly resounded from afar. All of them looked over to its source, and they saw a young girl had suddenly appeared above the devil caracal. Aria's eyes were scarlet red as she slammed her fist at the devil caracal's head. Bang! The devil caracal crashed down from midair, but Aria was even faster. She slammed against its head before it could even crash to the ground. A howl of pain resounded. The devil caracal was slammed into the ground. Aria patted her palms together and gazed at Yang Yi. Yang Yi gulped, and then he pointed at Zhuamu's group. It was obvious what he was trying to convey. Needless to say, Aria was quite terrifying right now. He'd experienced the devil caracal's strength himself, and while he'd heavily injured it with a single attack, that attack hadn't been lethal. However, Aria had crushed it as soon as they fought. Couldn't even fight back. Aria's strength was much more terrifying than the last time they met. Even now, he didn't dare to say that he could defeat her. Even though Aria wasn't the same anymore, Yang Yi was still happy to see her stronger. Because the stronger she was, the better she would be at keeping herself safe. Aria looked along his finger, and it made Zhuamu and the others' expressions change. Yang Yi was extremely terrifying already, and if Aria was included, their side's advantage in numbers would be gone. But just a moment later, Aria gazed at Yang Yi. Yang Yi's eyelids twitched. He didn't want to fight her now, because if they did, they would definitely end up dead. Yang Yi hurriedly pointed at Zhuamu's group, and he saw them hurriedly retreat. They created a huge amount of distance between themselves and Yang Yi. Zhuamu and the others' retreat made Aria move her gaze away from them, because she didn't sense a threat from them. Emperor Li suddenly laughed coldly by Zhuamu's side. Yang Yi, come on. Let us see if you, the new sword cultivator at the ordinary sword realm, or the evil beast of the three-dimensional universe is more formidable. Yang Yi glanced at Emperor Li. Would you like to see which one of us is stronger? Emperor Li's face instantly turned quite unsightly. Presently, there may be less than a handful of people in the world who could fight Yang Yi, and they didn't include him. Yang Yi was one of the strongest experts in the world right now. Yang Yi didn't waste his breath on Emperor Li and gazed at Aria. Meanwhile, Aria vanished on the spot. Yang Yi's expression changed slightly. He put his sword away and raised his arms. Even though Aria was strong, he had a chance of breaking through her defenses at his current realm of strength. And he would naturally not harm her. A petite figure flashed at him. Bang! Yang Yi was instantly blasted far away. As soon as he stopped himself, the space below and behind him collapsed. Emperor Li and the others grinned when they witnessed this. The experts of the four-dimensional universe didn't attack either. It was best to just allow Yang Yi and Aria to fight to the death right now. Aria suddenly vanished on the spot, and space was torn into bits in her wake. It was caused by pure physical strength. Aria's physical strength may not be at the limits of this world, but there was probably no one else as strong as her right now. Even Yang Yi was extremely fearful of her physical strength. This time, Yang Yi didn't choose to collide with her and hurriedly withdrew the pair of horns. Bang! The space in front of Yang Yi collapsed. At the same time, a figure forcibly stopped before him. The figure was very close. Aria's appearance hadn't changed much, but her eyes were terrifyingly scarlet red, and her horns had turned blood red. They were just like how Yang Yi's hair was when his slaughter intent erupted forth. Aria gazed at the horns in Yang Yi's grasp and seemed quite lost and dazed. But just a moment later, a pained expression appeared on her face. Yang Yi was about to speak when Aria suddenly roared with fury. Bang! A wave of powerful energy instantly blasted Yang Yi away, and Aria didn't attack again. She just turned around and charged at Zhuamu's group. She had a very ferocious and pained expression on her face, and tears were rolling down from the corners of her eyes. But Yang Yi wasn't able to see that. Emperor Li and the other smiles stiffened when they witnessed this. Zhuamu suddenly took a step forward while the saber sheath on his waist shook violently. A moment later, he leaped up and swung his saber. A dazzling ray of saber energy shone like the sun. Meanwhile, a petite afterimage flashed. Bang! The dazzling saber energy was instantly blasted into bits, and then a figure was slammed away. It was Zhuamu. His saber had shattered. After she instantly blasted Zhuamu away, Arya suddenly slapped her palms against the ground. Boom! A wave of powerful energy surged into the ground, and it instantly turned into a bottomless abyss. As for the Destiny Realm experts in front of her, they were blasted backward repeatedly. While Arya was extremely strong, the joint forces of a few dozen Destiny Realm experts were able to overcome her strength. Meanwhile, a sword howl resounded. Emperor Li and the others were horrified when they heard it. A moment later, the head of a Destiny Realm expert near Emperor Li shot up into the air. When the others realized what had happened, another Destiny Realm expert's head had shot up into the air. They had been able to focus their strength on Yang Yi earlier. So, even though Yang Yi was strong, he couldn't overcome their joint forces. But now, he had Arya to keep them busy, and so they couldn't focus on him. Under such circumstances, the threat Yang Yi posed multiplied by more than 10 times. Right when Yang Yi was about to attack again, something unexpected occurred. A loud explosion resounded and a white shadow was pushed back repeatedly. It was Xianxia. Yang Yi looked up, and then an afterimage suddenly appeared before him. Yang Yi twisted his body sideways while swinging his sword horizontally. At the instant he moved sideways, a pitch-black hand appeared before his face, and it slapped at him the moment his sword shot forward. Bang! Yang Yi was blasted over 3 kilometers back. The mysterious expert was in front of him. Suddenly, a ray of dark light slashed at the mysterious expert, and Xianxia was behind it. The mysterious expert glanced at the dark light and waved his right hand. Bang! The dark light exploded apart, but an even stronger wave of energy swept over from behind it. The mysterious expert clenched his right hand, and a huge, ethereal fist appeared behind him. A moment later, he vanished on the spot, and the huge fist descended. Xianxia seemed completely unafraid as she watched the huge fist descend. She stomped her right foot down and transformed into a ray of dark light that slammed against the huge fist. Bang! The huge fist collapsed, but just a moment later, an afterimage appeared before Xianxia. Xianxia punched at it. The mysterious expert swung a punch as well. A ray of dark light and black light slammed against each other. Boom! A moment of silence ensued, and then a deafening explosion rumbled. After that, 2 figures were pushed back incessantly. Meanwhile, once he was certain that Xianxia wasn't in danger, Yang Yi charged at Emperor Li and the others, because Arya was being besieged by them. But neither Arya or Yang Yi could fight all of them on their own. Meanwhile, a voice came from afar. "Enter the city!" As soon as the voice gave the order, the Destiny Realm expert from the 4-dimensional universe fled into the city. Emperor Li and the others fled to the city as well. They had planned to annihilate Arya, but after fighting her, they realized that while they had suppressed her, they couldn't do anything to her. That petite figure didn't just possess the strength to obliterate everything before her. Her defenses were absolutely abnormal as well. They couldn't harm her at all. Instead of Arya, they would rather face Yang Yi. At the very least, they could kill him, but Arya was impossible to kill. Now that Arya and Yang Yi had joined forces, they didn't dare to face them at all. Yang Yi charged after the fleeing Destiny Realm experts. But a huge barrier of light suddenly appeared on the city walls, and it slammed down upon him. Yang Yi quickly stopped himself and swung his sword. A ray of sword energy flashed. Bang! The sword energy exploded apart, and Yang Yi was instantly blasted backward repeatedly. He was pushed around 30 kilometers away. Once he stopped himself, a wisp of blood seeped out from the corners of his mouth, and his right hand was trembling. Yang Yi gazed at the barrier of light which was retracting back to the city, and there was an extremely solemn expression on his face. Arya suddenly stopped charging as well, and then she glanced at Yang Yi. Yang Yi's eyelids twitched, and he hurriedly moved aside. He knew he couldn't afford to get into battle with her. Arya was so strong that he couldn't do anything to stop her. Arya didn't attack Yang Yi. She glanced at the mysterious expert who was still in battle with Xianxia, and then she vanished on the spot. The mysterious expert suddenly stopped, and then he turned around and pulled in opposite directions. Hiss! The space before him condensed into an ethereal shield. Meanwhile, Arya slammed against it. Boom! The shield didn't break, but the mysterious expert was blasted over 300 m back. Suddenly, a ray of black light flashed. Bang! The mysterious expert was blasted away again. Xianxia was about to attack again when she suddenly looked to the side. Arya was charging at her. Xianxia frowned slightly and twisted her right hand slightly. A ray of dazzling dark light slammed against Arya. She naturally recognized Arya. But at this moment, she didn't dare to hold back against the force of this attack. Boom! The dark light shattered and Xianxia was blasted backward repeatedly. Even she couldn't really endure Arya's strength. Arya was about to charge after Xianxia. Xianxia frowned slightly. Her right hand had cracked open from the collision. Yang Yi hurriedly appeared before Arya. Arya, don't attack her. You can't attack her because that's an ally. He pointed at the mysterious expert and did his best to convince her. Attack that guy. That's an enemy. Let's attack him together. Arya glanced coldly at Yang Yi. Yang Yi was a little worried because Arya wasn't that easy to reason with right now. If she insisted on attacking him and Xianxia, then the situation here would instantly change. His intuition told him that Arya really wanted to eat him too. If it wasn't for those horns, she would definitely hunt him to the ends of the world. Meanwhile, Arya suddenly moved her gaze away and looked at the mysterious expert. Actually, she was here for the mysterious expert. Arya suddenly vanished on the spot. Hiss! A sharp tearing sound resounded. Bang! The area where the mysterious expert stood collapsed. However, he suddenly appeared 3 kilometers away. Arya looked at the mysterious expert and slowly clenched her right fist. A vicious aura rippled out from her. Yang Yi frowned slightly because her aura was quite unusual. Bang! Suddenly, an explosion resounded in space, and then 2 figures flashed. Bang! A figure descended before Yang Yi and Xianxia. It was Qi Bitian. At this moment, her countenance was rather pale. Obviously, she was injured. Suddenly, Arya gazed at the mysterious expert and shadow, and then she charged over. Yang Ye's expression changed drastically from the sight of this, and then a ray of sword energy went after Arya. Monarch Yen suddenly took a step forward. Bang! A pitch-black arc of lightning swept out from him. Meanwhile, Arya's fist slammed forward. Bang! The lightning was forced to a stop. However, it wasn't destroyed by the force of her punch. Conversely, a figure slammed against Arya. It was the mysterious expert. Yang Yi appeared by Arya's side, and a sword stabbed at the mysterious expert. The mysterious expert decisively abandoned Arya and stopped moving. He pressed his arms inward toward his chest. Yang Ye's sword stopped just an inch away from the mysterious expert's forehead. The mysterious expert's arms had clamped down upon it. Meanwhile, Yang Yi suddenly grabbed the sword with his left hand and twisted it. Bang! A wave of powerful sword intent rippled forward. Bang! The mysterious expert was pushed over 300 m back, but right at this moment, a fiery red bolt of divine lightning appeared in Monarch Yan's grasp. He waved it at Arya. Watch out! Qi Bitian's voice suddenly resounded from behind Arya. Arya seemed as if she hadn't heard Qi Bitian and just slammed herself at it. A head-on collision with the body. Boom! In an instant, Arya was blasted away, and fiery red lightning flickered all around her. Countless arcs of fiery red lightning were madly corroding her body. Ah! Suddenly, Arya howled with fury, and her voice carried a trace of misery and pain. Yang Ye's figure stiffened slightly upon hearing this, and then he turned around and charged at Arya. Meanwhile, a palm slammed against his back. Bam! Yang Yi was blasted away. The armor on him was instantly blasted apart. While the armor had warded off most of the force, his entire body and internal organs had cracked open. A serious injury with one hit. The mysterious expert was about to attack again when a ray of dark light shot at him. Xianxia. Meanwhile, Qi Bidian stopped Monarch Yan. However, Monarch Yan's strength was even stronger than before now. Of course, it was because Qi Bidian was strong. Qi Bidian made him feel threatened, and that forced him to gradually expose his trump cards. Yang Yi arrived before Arya, and Arya, who was in great pain, slammed a punch at him. Yang Yi moved 300 m to the side, and then he summoned Snowy. Snowy gazed at Arya and immediately wanted to fly over. However, Yang Yi stopped her. He pointed at the fiery red lightning that was burning Arya. "Snowy, can you get them off her?" Arya was in an extremely berserk state. So, not only was he afraid of letting Snowy get closer to her, even he didn't dare to get close to her. Snowy glanced at the mysterious fiery red lightning, and then she waved her paw. The sprite staff appeared in her grasp. Snowy waved the sprite staff, and then the spirit energy in the surroundings suddenly converged. The spirit energy surged toward Arya like a torrent, causing Arya to suddenly stop when she was about to attack. Spirit energy. It was of no threat to her. Snowy opened her mouth, and then the mysterious fiery lightning around Arya started to tremble. They gradually left Arya and fled toward the surroundings. Snowy and Yang Yi sighed with relief when they witnessed this. However, Arya suddenly slapped her palm forward. Yang Ye's expression changed drastically, and he shot backward madly while holding Snowy in his arms. At this moment, the expressions of everyone here had changed. With Arya at the center, space started to collapse inch by inch. At the same time, a wave of powerful energy erupted like a volcano and surged madly in all directions. It was so powerful that the world dimmed down before it. Yang Yi shot backward like a madman, and it didn't take long for him to arrive before the floating city. Meanwhile, the energy had arrived before him. Yang Yi hurriedly tossed Snowy into the primordial pagoda, and then he raised his sword before him. A wave of sword intent and slaughter intent surged out madly from his sword. Bang! As soon as they collided with each other, Yang Ye's figure shook violently. However, he'd forcibly resisted it. Meanwhile, the energy didn't stop and slammed against the floating city. Meanwhile, a huge barrier of light appeared around the city walls. This time, it was made of lightning, and it emanated energy that wasn't any weaker to the energy Arya had released. As soon as they collided, the impact blasted Yang Yi into the air. At the same time, the entire city quaked like an earthquake was running through it. Xianxia and Qi Bidian stopped as well, and the mysterious expert and Shadow didn't attack either. At this moment, all of them were looking at Arya. Even Snowy had stuck her head out. Arya closed her eyes, and the scales around her were actually starting to fall off. Meanwhile, the horns on her head were gradually changing. They were undergoing an indescribably transformation. Suddenly, the mysterious expert said, "She's evolving. We can't allow her to succeed." At this moment, his aura suddenly rose explosively. Rumble. The world shook violently, and then everything here started to turn ethereal. Yang Yi had a solemn expression on his face. The mysterious expert clearly planned to expose his true strength in order to kill Arya. Yang Yi practically didn't hesitate to toss Snowy back into the primordial pagoda before charging at the mysterious expert. Qi Bidian glanced at Xianxia, and the latter nodded slightly. She tapped her right foot down, and a ray of black light flashed. Yang Yi was the first to arrive before the mysterious expert, and the latter was furious. "Fuck off!" The mysterious expert immediately slammed a punch at Yang Yi. The strength of this punch was simply incomparable to any attack the mysterious expert had previously revealed. A ferocious glow flashed through Yang Ye's eyes. Actually, his intuition told him that he shouldn't go head-on against this punch, because his body had already been damaged from going head-on against the last punch. So, it was very unwise to go head-on against this punch right now. But he had no other choice. Arya was behind him. Yang Yi tightened his grip on the sword precursor, and then he slashed. The domain sword, a mouthful of blood sprayed from Yang Yi before the punch even arrived before him, and then the punch slammed against his sword. At this moment, Yang Yi stomped his right foot down. Bang! The space below him exploded into bits. Meanwhile, he relied on the counterforce to forcefully stop himself from being blasted away. However, forcibly stopping himself like that caused a few more mouthfuls of blood to spray from him. Arya gazed at Yang Yi from behind, and no one knew what she was thinking. Suddenly, Snowy appeared before Arya. Arya's originally calm gaze instantly became vicious from the sight of Snowy. Yang Ye's expression changed drastically when he sensed this, and he couldn't go to Snowy right now. Yang Yi swung his sword repeatedly at the mysterious expert. However, it was he who was pushed back repeatedly. Meanwhile, Snowy ignored the vicious aura around Arya. She went over to Arya, just like she used to. Snowy waved her paws swiftly. As she waved them, she pointed behind Arya while anxiety covered her chubby face. Obviously, she wanted Arya to run. Arya gazed at Snowy, and she'd already clenched her fist. An old enemy. Snowy and Arya could be said to be born enemies, just like fire and water. In the past, Arya would naturally not harm Snowy, but she wasn't the same Arya anymore. She had undisguised killing intent in her eyes as she gazed at Snowy, but Snowy hadn't noticed that at all. She felt that Arya didn't understand what she was saying and started waving her paws even more quickly. Meanwhile, Arya suddenly clenched her right fist. She was about to attack when Snowy opened her mouth. Run! There was still no sound when she spoke. As she spoke, she withdrew many fruits and placed them before Arya. They were world-born fruits and chaotic fruits. Besides that, there was the desolate axe. It was Arya's old weapon. She'd given Arya everything she felt was a treasure to Arya. Suddenly, Arya grabbed Snowy by the throat. At practically the exact same moment, a Tonghulu appeared in Snowy's grasp. Arya was stunned as she gazed at the Tonghulu, and then she stopped herself. As she gazed at it, tears suddenly surged out of her eyes. A moment of silence ensued, and then Arya suddenly howled with fury. A moment later, she clenched her right fist before slamming it against her head. Bam! Arya was blasted away. Meanwhile, Snowy was stunned. A moment later, she charged over. At the same time, Arya crawled up from the ground, and there was blood coming from her eyes, nostrils, and ears. Her physical defenses were formidable, and very few could do anything to her. However, if she attacked herself, when she saw Snowy appear before her again, Arya glanced coldly at Snowy, and then she grabbed the Tonghulu in Snowy's grasp before vanishing into the distance. Evolution. Her body was at the most critical moment of her evolution, so her intuition made her choose to leave immediately. Snowy was stunned as she watched Arya vanish into the distance. Bang! Suddenly, a figure slammed into the ground before her. It was Yang Yi. At this moment, Yang Yi was in a terrible state. He was covered in blood, especially his arms. They had cracked open and had severely warped. Even the bones within them could be seen very clearly. Snowy was stunned by the sight of this. An instant later, she gazed at the mysterious expert who was charging in their direction. She was about to charge with the sprite staff, but Yang Yi suddenly stood up. He grabbed her and tossed her into the primordial pagoda. In the primordial pagoda, Snowy descended firmly onto the ascension platform. She rolled on it quite a bit before finally crawling up to her feet. After that, she was about to charge out again, but the woman in white stopped her. The little fellow would just be causing trouble if she was allowed to head outside right now. Snowy waved her paws swiftly while anxiety covered her face. The woman in white spoke softly. I know. Don't worry. Snowy was still waving her paws. Moreover, her eyes kept wandering off into the surroundings. Obviously, she was prepared to run at any moment. The woman in white rubbed Snowy's head, looked up at the sky, and her eyes gradually turned icy cold. Outside the primordial pagoda, the mysterious expert suddenly stopped and turned around. Meanwhile, a woman arrived before him. It was Xianxia. Xianxia formed a seal and spoke softly, Omni Ruin! Bang! In an instant, the space around the mysterious expert exploded apart inch by inch. Countless rays of dark light surged toward the mysterious expert. Meanwhile, the mysterious expert pressed his index and middle finger together, and then he tapped it forward. Annihilation of life. As soon as his finger descended, the mass of dark light suddenly stopped. It was like they had been frozen there. A moment later, countless specks of black that seemed like snowflakes appeared here. Along with their arrival, the dark light started to be obliterated inch by inch. In just a short while, all the dark light had completely vanished without a trace. Meanwhile, a shadow flashed through the black specks. Bang! Xianxia was blasted away. The afterimage charged at Xianxia's figure again. However, a ray of sword energy suddenly slammed down at it. The afterimage stopped, turned around swiftly, and then raised his right hand lightly. A speck of black light shot forward. Bang! The sword energy shattered. The mysterious expert looked in Xianxia's direction and pressed his palms down slightly. In an instant, countless black specks of light appeared around Xianxia. These black specks of light were extremely terrifying, and every one of them contained horrifying energy. Xianxia's face was rather ferocious at this moment. While he was seriously injured, there was no fear in his eyes. Xianxia held the sword precursor in his right grasp while blood surged incessantly toward it. Suddenly, the black specks of light started moving rapidly in Xianxia's direction. Xianxia's pupils constricted. He was about to swing his sword when a white shadow suddenly flashed before him, and then rays of sword energy bloomed before him like lotuses. The woman in white. Hiss! 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 A horrifying wave of shattering resounded. After being locked in a stalemate against the black specks of light for a few breaths of time, the lotuses around Xianxia started to gradually wither and be obliterated. At the same time, Xianxia noticed that the woman in white's countenance had practically instantly turned ghastly pale. Xianxia didn't hesitate to take a step forward, and then a wave of mysterious energy appeared here. The sword domain. As soon as he unleashed the sword domain, Xianxia's face warped because he was heavily injured right now. Forcibly utilizing the sword domain could be said to be beyond the limits of his body. But he had practically no choice right now. It was the time to risk his life. If he didn't risk it now, then he would lose it soon after. If he risked it now, he may have a chance to survive. At the instant the sword domain appeared, the specks of black light seemed to show signs of being suppressed. But just an instant later, they started to fight back crazily. At this moment, Xianxia almost lost consciousness. Xianxia bit the tip of his tongue and forced himself to stay awake. After that, she stabbed his sword forward. An attack that carried his full strength. Bang! A wave of powerful sword intent, slaughter intent, and blood-red sword energy rippled out like a wave in the sword domain. Bang! 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 Explosions resounded incessantly through the area. At the same time, countless rays of sword energy and various other forms of energy rippled madly in all directions. Everywhere they passed, space was practically obliterated in an instant. It was extremely shocking. The mysterious expert didn't try to attack again and just shot backward. After that, he waved his right hand, and the wave of energy that arrived before him was instantly turned into nothingness. At this moment, the mysterious expert's aura was actually slightly stronger than before. Xianxia was supporting himself up by pressing both hands against his sword, and blood was seeping out incessantly from the corners of his mouth. His body was covered in cracks. Even his face had cracked completely. It was an absolutely horrifying sight. The woman in white and Xianxia were in front of him. On the other side, Qi Bidian was in a fierce battle against Monarch Yen. However, she was being suppressed right now. Meanwhile, the woman in white waved her right hand, and past life suddenly shot forward. Monarch Yen suddenly stopped, and then he turned around and slammed the fiery red lightning forward. Bang! A dazzling fiery glow and a ray of sword energy exploded apart in midair. A moment of silence ensued, and then the fiery red lightning pierced through the sword energy and surged down upon the woman in white. She remained indifferent as she took a step forward, and lotuses bloomed below her feet. A moment later, she transformed into a ray of white light that shot up into the sky. She was going straight for the lightning. Boom! A deafening explosion resounded through the sky, and then a lotus of swords exploded apart before a white figure crashed down from above. Xianxia frowned slightly before Yang Yi, and then she wiped off the blood on the corner of her mouth. She was about to attack when Yang Yi suddenly grabbed her hand. She gazed at him, and her hands trembled at the sight of him right now. She stretched out her hand to touch Yang Yi's face. "You go first." Yang Yi shook his head. Xianxia spoke softly. "It's not the time to be willful." Yang Yi shook his head again. It wasn't that he refused to speak, it was just very difficult for him to speak right now. He pulled Xianxia and Qi Bidian behind him, and then he supported up the woman in white. At this moment, all three of them were seriously injured. Of course, they were in a slightly better state than him. At this moment, the experts in the city had emerged. There were over 40 Peak Destiny Realm experts around them, and a huge barrier of light had appeared around the city. This barrier of light emanated monstrous pressure that slammed down upon them in waves. A disadvantage, an absolute disadvantage. Yang Yi wiped off the blood on the corner of his mouth and raised his palm. A small golden pagoda appeared there. The primordial pagoda. Yang Yi passed it to Xianxia. Xianxia frowned slightly. She was about to speak when Yang Yi suddenly said, "I don't know if I'll survive. If I don't, then allow me to die before all of you. If you can, just leave. They want me, so please do as I say." As he spoke, blood was practically spraying from his mouth. Xianxia looked Yang Yi in the eyes, and he cracked a smile. "Let me protect all of you just once." As he spoke, Yang Yi suddenly turned around and charged at the mysterious expert and monarch Yen. Xianxia's expression changed drastically. She was about to stop Yang Yi when a strand of mysterious energy enveloped them. The sword domain. The sword domain descended upon all three of them. They were shocked and hurriedly withdrew their energy. If they were to release their energy now, even if it was just their physical strength, it would cause a huge amount of damage to Yang Yi. However, if they didn't do anything, they couldn't catch up to him at all. Just like that, Yang Yi instantly created distance between them. At this moment, Xianxia's face was ghastly pale, and it was like she'd lost her soul. Yang Yi was growing faster and faster, and his eyes were shut tight. At this moment, figures flashed incessantly through his mind. Xianxia, Snowy, Weiran, Yushi, Zhixian, Area, Xianxia, Qi Bidian. Yang Ye's face was covered in tears without him even realizing it. His life had meaning because of their presence. Suddenly, Yang Ye's voice came from afar. "Snowy, be good from now on." Snowy looked up at the sky from within the primordial pagoda. She stretched out her little paw while her tiny figure trembled violently. At this moment, her mind was blank. Outside the primordial pagoda, Yang Yi was growing closer and closer to the mysterious expert and monarch Yen, and they didn't do anything. Their joint forces were even capable of going against the strongest form of destiny. Suddenly, Yang Yi roared with laughter. At this moment, he thought of nothing in his mind. He sought death. He was truly seeking death this time. Yang Yi grabbed the hilt of his sword, and at the instant he drew it, he spoke softly in his heart, "Goodbye, forever." As soon as he finished speaking, his sword left its sheath. At this moment, it seemed like the world had frozen still. At a point high above the clouds, the woman seated before the go board stood up abruptly. Justice, that was on the board, seemed to have sensed something and shook violently while emanating a resounding sword howl. She looked down and frowned slightly. An empty mind and an attack to decide on life and death. The sword Tao of fate. At this moment, her face was very gloomy. At a distant point in the starry sky, a sword cultivator in a cloud-white robe stopped abruptly because his sword was trembling violently in his grasp. The sword cultivator looked down at his sword, and it gradually calmed down. The sword cultivator looked in a certain direction, and then he grinned and continued forward. The four-dimensional universe. When Yang Yi charged at the mysterious expert and monarch Yen, Xianxia and the others knew that he would die. However, they were stunned when they saw his attack. Meanwhile, Monarch Yen and the mysterious expert's faces changed drastically. A moment ago, they felt that unless the strongest form of destiny was here, no one could possibly save Yang Yi. Yang Yi was bound for death. It was what they thought just a moment ago, but at this moment those thoughts had vanished. When a sword cultivator forgot life and death, and had just a clear mind, it represented that sword cultivator's sword carried both the sword Dao of emotion and the emotionless sword Dao. Emotionless because of emotion, especially when that sword cultivator was already at the ordinary sword realm. Monarch Yen was the first to attack. At this moment, his aura instantly rose explosively. At the same time, the fiery red lightning in his grasp slashed at Yang Yi like a fiery saber. Yang Ye's sword descended. Unlike before, it was soundless and without any fluctuations of energy, and it didn't even emanate a glow, sword intent, or sword energy. It was unusually calm. The sword descended. A moment later, it struck the fiery red lightning, and it didn't stop at all as it continued down. Meanwhile, the fiery red lightning was sliced into two and soundlessly turned ethereal. It didn't cause any loud noise or surge of energy. The sword arrived above Monarch Yen. The latter didn't choose to go head-on against this. He tapped his right foot down and floated backward. The sword continued down. Monarch Yan's body exploded in the distance, but just a moment later his shattered body actually healed on its own. However, it was ethereal. Annihilation of life. Meanwhile, a voice resounded in Yang Ye's ears. A moment later, numerous thumb-sized specks of black light appeared in the space around Yang Yi. They were like numerous tiny black holes that were madly devouring everything around Yang Yi. Actually, they were black holes, but they were shrunk down from numerous huge black holes. The devouring force they possessed was something that could even destroy Xianxia's omni-ruin. Yang Yi took a step back and raised his right hand. The sword precursor stood on his palm. When the black specks of light surged at him, the sword precursor suddenly started spinning rapidly. Hiss! 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 Rays of sword energy bloomed like flowers as they rippled toward the surroundings. As soon as the sword energy and black specks of light came into contact, they shook violently, and then the space in the surroundings suddenly turned ethereal. 2 breaths of time later, a huge expanse of space around Yang Yi and the mysterious expert had turned pitch black. However, the sword energy and black specks of light were still there. They were still colliding intensely. However, they didn't remain in a stalemate for long. The mysterious expert suddenly shot backward because Qi Bitian and the others had arrived. They stood before Yang Yi, and the mysterious expert and Monarch Yen didn't attack either. As for the Destiny Realm experts in the surroundings, they didn't dare to attack at all. Xianxia gazed coldly at Monarch Yen. She was about to attack when the Destiny Realm experts around them retreated. Meanwhile, the mysterious expert led the experts of the Endworld back into the floating city. Monarch Yen and the mysterious expert stood on the city walls. The woman in white glanced at them and said, "Let's go." Qi Bitian and Xianxia nodded, and then they vanished into the distance with Yang Yi. On the city walls, the mysterious expert suddenly said, "What a pity!" Monarch Yen spoke softly. "It is a pity. Not only has he attained the ordinary sword realm, he has grasped a new type of the sword Dao, and that sword Dao, I'm afraid it's only inferior to those 2 sword cultivators." The mysterious expert gazed at Monarch Yen and was puzzled. "2. Monarch Yen replied softly, "A sword cultivator in a cloud-white robe. He's very strong." The mysterious expert asked, "How strong?" Monarch Yen fell silent for an instant and replied, "I have no confidence in winning, even if I use all my trump cards. Of course, that woman is even more terrifying. She has always been a mystery." The mysterious expert shot a glance up into space. At a point above the clouds, there was a simply godlike woman looking down upon the living beings below the clouds. A short while later, the mysterious expert suddenly spoke softly, "What about our plan?" Monarch Yen nodded. "It's almost there." The mysterious expert said, "Hurry it up, even if there's a price to pay." Monarch Yen nodded. 3-dimensional universe. point in outer space. A part of space cracked open, and then a few figures flashed out from there. It was Yang Yi and the others. As soon as they appeared, Xianxia gazed at Yang Yi, and then she swung a punch at him. Meanwhile, Yang Yi suddenly crashed to the ground. Xianxia was shocked, and her punch was unfurled into a palm that caught Yang Yi's falling figure. "He's very seriously injured," the woman in white spoke solemnly. "Send him into the pagoda." Xianxia hurriedly placed the primordial pagoda into Yang Yi, and then she took Yang Yi into it. Outside the pagoda, Chi-Bidian and the woman in white didn't head inside. Chi-Bidian glanced at the woman in white. "You're not like the rest of them." The woman in white grinned. Of course she knew who Chi-Bidian was speaking about. Chi-Bidian looked up at the distant starry sky. "Those two didn't use their full strength earlier, right?" The woman in white nodded. Chi-Bidian spoke softly. "How strong are they?" She pondered deeply for a moment and replied, "Greater than us, weaker than her." Chi-Bidian's eyes narrowed slightly. "How strong is she?" The woman in white glanced at Chi-Bidian. "It would take less than 3 attacks for her to kill me." In an instant, the area fell silent. A short while passed before the woman in white spoke. "I'm leaving." Chi-Bidian asked, "Where are you going?" She grinned. "To the other 2 forms of me. It's time for us to meet. Otherwise, we may never have another chance. Take care." The woman in white transformed into a ray of sword energy that vanished into the boundless sky. Chi-Bidian watched her leave in silence. In the primordial pagoda, Yang Yi laid there on the ascension platform. Xianxia and all the other people and demon beasts in the primordial pagoda were standing around the platform. All of them had extremely solemn expressions on their faces as they gazed at Yang Yi's figure. Snowy was releasing all kinds of spirit energy while crying as she stood before Yang Yi. She was extremely sad, and her tears were flowing like a river. The hearts of the others ached from the sight of this. With the help of the primordial violet energy and Snowy's special spirit energy, Yang Yi's injuries were gradually healing. Xianxia and the others heaved a sigh of relief when they witnessed this. The demons seemed to visibly relax as well. After being by Yang Yi's side for so long, they had naturally formed feelings of friendship toward him. Around an hour later, Yang Yi suddenly opened his eyes, and the first thing he saw was Snowy's chubby face. Snowy scratched Yang Yi's face gently with her tiny paws and cracked a smile. Yang Yi grinned, and then he stood up and glanced at the surroundings. His smile grew brighter when he saw all the familiar faces here. Yang Yi spoke softly. "All of you are here." Snowy hurriedly nodded while Xianxia and the others started crying instead. When Yang Yi charged at Monarch Yen and the mysterious expert, no one could understand the despair they felt. At that moment, their hearts had stopped. Yang Yi stood up and went to hug all of them, even the demon beasts. When he chose to die, he realized how important all of them were to him. At that time, his mind was blank. Actually, this blankness wasn't thinking about nothing, but rather it was thinking about everything. At that moment, he hadn't just attained the sword Tao of fate, he'd attained the emotionless sword Tao. Emotionlessness wasn't being heartless, it was emotionless for emotion. The sword Tao of emotion included the emotionless sword Tao. Yang Yi left the primordial pagoda while Snowy fell asleep on his shoulder. Now, Snowy refused to leave Yang Yi for even a moment, not even while she slept. She insisted on sleeping on his shoulder. Yang Yi felt rather helpless toward this, and of course, his heart ached as well. The little fellow was so worried about him. She'd lost area, and she would collapse if she lost him too. Xianxia glanced at Snowy's snoring figure, and then she gazed at Yang Yi. "What do you plan to do now?" Yang Yi shook his head. "Take it one step at a time." Xianxia nodded. "Your current strength is at the peak of the 3-dimensional universe. It can be said that perhaps only a handful are capable of killing you on their own. However, don't underestimate Monarch Yen and that mysterious expert. They are formidable." Yang Yi nodded. Even at the end, he could still sense that they hadn't used their full strengths during the last battle. They were still concealing their strength. Yang Yi knew that they still hadn't treated him as their greatest opponent. It wasn't that they were looking down on him, but the woman above the clouds was too strong. The woman above the clouds. Xianxia looked up and wondered how strong she really was. Xianxia suddenly said, "We're leaving." Xianxia moved his gaze back to Xianxia. "Where are you going?" Xianxia and Qi Bidian exchanged glances. In the end, Qi Bidian smiled. "According to our inference, no matter what that woman is planning, she should be making a move soon. We want to seize this final period of time to go look for something." Xianxia asked curiously, "What?" Qi Bidian smiled. "You'll know when the time comes." Xianxia was at a loss for words. Xianxia walked over to Xianxia, and her figure gradually soared into the air. She stopped when her head towered over Xianxia's head. She patted him on the shoulder and said, "I'll be there when you need me." She turned around and vanished into the sky with Qi Bidian. Somewhere in the clouds, the woman gazed at the Go board before her with a smile on the corners of her mouth while ceaselessly flipping a Go piece between her right index and middle fingers. Meanwhile, a shadow sat before her. She put the piece down. "I want the three-dimensional universe destroyed. 10 days. Nothing must be alive in the three-dimensional universe within 10 days. Can you do that?" The shadow fell silent for a moment and shook his head. The woman waved her right hand, and justice vanished from the side. A moment later, a sword appeared above the floating city in the four-dimensional universe and descended. Boom! A pitch-black barrier of light appeared in the air above the city. Meanwhile, the sword descended. Bang! The terrifying barrier of light exploded apart. It had been shattered with such ease. High above in the clouds, the shadow suddenly howled with fury. "Why don't you do it yourself?" She glanced at him. "Do you know what my Tao is?" She didn't wait for the shadow to reply and grinned. "The fate Tao. With but a thought, the world grows and flourishes. And with just a single thought, everything changes. I've accomplished the former." She walked over to the divine tree at the side, looked down beneath the clouds, and spoke softly. "Living beings of the world, sacrifice yourselves to my Tao. The fate Tao." The area suddenly fell silent. However, in the sky above the floating city in the four-dimensional universe, justice was descending slowly. The powerful aura it emanated caused the world to warp before it. Countless experts were looking at the sword from within the city. All of them felt only despair before that sword. That woman again. Some of the older experts here recognized that sword. All those years ago when the four-dimensional universe planned to take over the three-dimensional universe, it was that woman who'd come here to their universe. Those who hadn't experienced that battle would never know how terrifying she was. No one could stop her sword. It was the same sword that had suffocated the four-dimensional universe for thousands of years. Now that sword was here again. When justice was about to strike the city, the shadow suddenly said, "I'll do it." Justice suddenly stopped above the city, but just a moment later, it slashed down at the city. Hiss! A ray of sword energy entered the city, and countless shrill cries resounded throughout the city. At least a quarter of the city's residents had been killed by this attack. In an instant, blood flowed into rivers throughout the streets. A monstrous aura suddenly erupted from the shadow and slammed down at the woman. She didn't move, but the aura vanished as soon as it passed the Go board. It was like the aura had never been there. She put down another piece and said, "That was punishment for you." The shadow fell silent for a short moment and sat down again. The woman smiled. "I know you want to kill me, and you've made some preparations. To be honest, I look forward to it a little." The shadow didn't say anything in response and just gradually turned ethereal. A moment later, he vanished from her vision. Meanwhile, justice descended on the Go board. She picked up the sword, walked over to an empty area, and then started practicing with the sword. Stab, flick, swing, slash, chop, angled slash. They were all basic moves, and there was nothing special about them. But if one looked carefully, one would notice that every swing contained a certain sword Tao. Throughout these countless years of the past, the woman had comprehended numerous sword Taos. Meanwhile, she swung her sword again. This attack was a straight stab, but it carried an intent to fight until the end. The sword Tao of fate. She suddenly put her sword away and shook her head slightly. It lacks a little something when compared to him. However, it's understandable. After all, no one can make me have the resolve to decide our fate in one clash. She sat down before the go board, and the sword automatically descended before the board. Universe City. Yang Yi returned to the city without making a sound. Only Ding Xiaoyao knew that he was back. In Ding Xiaoyao's room, she spoke softly. How is the situation out there? Yang Yi shook his head. It's bad. It wasn't that he was being pessimistic, but the situation was bad. Even at his current level of strength, he still felt the three-dimensional universe had no chance. Ding Xiaoyao fell silent. Yang Yi smiled. Do you have any ideas? She shook her head. No, I don't. Yang Yi spoke softly. Take the god race and leave. Ding Xiaoyao's petite figure trembled. A short while later, Ding Xiaoyao shook her head. I've already given my everything to the god race. She looked up at the man who stood before her. This time you live, then I live. And if you die, I die. Yang Yi sighed softly and didn't say anything else. A short while later, Yang Yi left the room. He went into the city, and he noticed that the atmosphere here was extremely oppressive. While Universe City had constantly resisted the pressure it suffered from the outside world, everyone knew that wasn't the end of it. The storm was still on its way. Yang Yi walked slowly through the streets. The entire street was empty, and he only saw a few people walking through it from time to time. Moreover, they were rushing through as if they were in pursuit of someone. Even Universe City has started to fall into chaos. Yang Yi continued forward slowly, just all by himself. The living beings. The heaven Tao. These words suddenly appeared in Yang Ye's mind. Yang Yi had come all the way here from an absolutely small world, profounder continent, and he'd experienced all sorts of things along the way. At this moment, he felt like human life was worthless. Regardless of whether it was at profounder continent, the radiant dimension, eternal kingdom, or any other world he'd been to, the lives in those worlds had been so worthless and insignificant. Perhaps two extraordinary experts would clash in battle, and then everyone else would perish as a result of it. And those extraordinary experts felt no pity toward those lost lives. In the eyes of the strong, the lives of the ordinary were insignificant like ants. Yang Yi suddenly withdrew a scripture and flipped it open. In the scripture, a row of words appeared before him. The heavens fails to control the grand Tao completely, and there is a way to escape. Yang Yi suddenly frowned. The heavens fails to control the grand Tao completely, and there is a way to escape. That means it is imperfect. Destiny escaped by surpassing herself and the Tao. If man and grand Tao merge, then it is perfection of the grand Tao. The true grand Tao isn't transcendence. And. Yang Ye's frown deepened at this point. What else? It was like he'd sensed something but failed to grasp it. Yang Ye's gaze gradually became blank. Meanwhile, the sword precursor suddenly left its sheath and floated before him. Bang! Suddenly, a huge explosion resounded in the sky above Universe City. In practically an instant, everyone in the city looked up. A huge black vortex had appeared in the sky above the city, and it was emanating strands of terrifying pressure that seemed capable of obliterating the world. Everyone in the city felt a strand of lethal and suffocating pressure. Activate the formation. A voice resounded in the city. Along with that command, a huge circle of light appeared in the air above the city. The circle of light didn't cover the entire city. It was only around 300 m wide, and it was many times smaller than the black vortex. However, it emanated an aura that wasn't any weaker to the black vortex. Their invisible energy started to collide madly in the sky above the city. Meanwhile, all the Destiny Realm experts converged in Universe Hall. Huang Ying practically immediately asked upon meeting Ding Xiaoyao, "Where's Brother Yang?" Yang Yi was their pillar of support. Ding Xiaoyao shook her head. "He's in the city, but he seems to have entered into a profound state. It's best not to disturb him." Huang Ying and the others nodded. While they wanted Yang Yi to be here, they were very well aware that sword cultivators had moments of sudden enlightenment. If they were to disturb him now, it would be very bad for him. Moreover, if Yang Yi benefited from this enlightenment, it would be extremely beneficial to Universe City. Ding Xiaoyao raised her hands and pressed them down in order to indicate that the others should calm down and let her speak. Calm down. They gazed at her, and she sat down before speaking. Allow me to be honest. At this point, we have no other choice. Fighting to the death is our only way out. Of course, if anyone wants to flee for their lives, please feel free to do so. I guarantee that we won't stop you. Not only will we not stop you, even Yang Yi won't do anything to you because of your decision. I can guarantee all of that. A black-robed old man suddenly stepped forward and said, Miss Ding, just tell us how we should fight them. A middle-aged man nodded. To be honest, everyone wants to live, but we are very well aware that the four-dimensional universe is out there, and destiny stands above us all. So how would we possibly survive? Drag out our existence as we once did. In any case, I don't want to live that life anymore. Besides that, during this time with Brother Yang, I finally understand why our strength is inferior to him. It's because he dares to fight. He shook his head and smiled. I don't want to cower again. If I die, I die. At the very least, it won't be that aggrieving. The old man nodded slightly. I've had too many days like that. Now, I really don't want to go back to that. Miss Ding, since Brother Yang isn't here, you can make the decisions. Ding Xiaoyao glanced at them, and none of the others raised any objections. Ding Xiaoyao felt quite gratified because Yang Yi had done so much for the universe and this city. So, if these people really chose to leave, she would be disappointed. She would be disappointed for Yang Yi. Actually, she'd been prepared to kill whoever dared to leave at a time like this. Even if it was against her own principles, and even if she would be breaking her own promise, she would still kill the person. Yang Yi had done too much for this city. He shouldn't suffer such betrayal. Ding Xiaoyao gazed at Chun Daozi. How long can the formation last? Chun Daozi fell silent. Ding Xiaoyao asked softly, What is it? Chun Daozi shook his head. If it's just the black vortex, my formation can last a very long time. But if the four-dimensional universe attacks in full force. Suddenly, everyone looked out the hall, and then practically all the experts here left it. All of them looked up, and they saw a middle-aged man walking out of the black vortex. Monarch Yen. Every step he took caused the world to tremble violently. Meanwhile, Monarch Yen took another step. Crack. Everyone watched as the huge circle of light above the city suddenly cracked apart. Chun Daozi was shocked. He must be stopped. Get City Governor Yang. As soon as he said that, Jian Wudi spoke abruptly. Don't disturb him. I'll help him stop that fellow for a moment. He vanished on the spot, and then a ray of sword energy suddenly appeared high above. Monarch Yen stopped. When the sword energy arrived around 3 m away from him, his figure suddenly turned ethereal. A moment later, he appeared behind the sword energy, and the sword energy shattered soundlessly. Jian Wudi's figure stiffened behind the sword energy. It was because a hand had suddenly grabbed him by the throat. It was Monarch Yen. Monarch Yan's eyes were filled with disregard. Besides that woman, everyone else in the three-dimensional universe is just a useless dog. He squeezed down slightly as he finished speaking. Bang! Jian Wudi's body exploded apart. Dead.